now on, Pastor Brendan should just come up and sit before he gives his sermon. Maybe.
And need to bring a boat?
That's true. While the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. When trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30.
We hear the parable of the sower this morning, which has special and significant meaning for our church. If you turn around, one of our stained glass windows that comes from the former church building, our historic church building, is the sower. And when I preached here, when I candidated here to be the minister at Forest Grove UCC, I did not know that the sower was up there, but I preached that reflection because it's my favorite parable, and so it's special to this church. And so will you pray with me? Great Spirit, heart of Christ, grow within us, and bless the speaking and the hearing of these words and the gentle spaces in between. Amen. So Jesus is speaking to people who feel powerless. To the people of first century Palestine who found themselves under Roman occupation, mostly under a double occupation, the occupation of the temple establishment or the oppression of the temple establishment, who was in corroboration with a violent Roman occupying presence throughout the land. And so people were accustomed to defining power and their understanding of their own power in relation to these systems. And so they felt powerless. If you feel you need to have a massive army to be powerful, you will feel powerless. If you feel like you need to have mountains of wealth to be powerful, you will feel powerless. If you feel like you need to have control over even the basic realities of life, birth, old age, sickness, death, the fact that we get hungry, we'll feel powerless. There are systems so much larger than us. There are realities and systems that are so much bigger than what we feel we can control. And today, if we're faced with our own menu of calamities that could so easily make us feel lost in this feeling of powerlessness. Certainly the pandemic made us feel that way. Certainly coming out of the pandemic and seeing the fragmentation, the disassociation, the avoidance, fragmenting human relationships. We hear of war in the news, and the heart of peace feels powerless. We even hear scientists talking about the sixth mass extinction, and the heart that reaches for eternal life feels powerless. And I don't want to depress us. The good news is to the people of first century Palestine and to us today, now, the wisdom of Christ redirects and refocuses our attention and points us back to the garden and to an understanding of God that is like the understanding of God expressed by the writer Arundhati Roy, who's the author of The God of Small Things, who says, sometimes I can still hear her breathing, that God of seeds, tiny things, like seeds. Jesus doesn't point to thrones or temples or giant halls of power. Jesus points and directs our attention to the tiniest thing and identifies it as the place where life is constantly emerging. So easily forgotten, so easily discarded or not noticed or taken for granted. The power in a small thing like a seed. St. Francis I always loved the St. Francis quote that said, what would you do if you knew the world was going to end tomorrow? And St. Francis says, I would go on tending my garden. This is the parable of the sower. And this is the same saint who said, preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. We go on tending our garden through all of our hopeful actions, through every way, every small action that we're capable of doing that welcomes and coaxes forth the realm of God. We might not have control over the results, but when Jesus invites us to be like the sower, focus on the power of the seed, and just move through this world planting seeds, tending the garden, we're invited to anchor ourselves in the life that is always emerging, this heart of love that has no beginning or no end, that is our true nature, that is the true nature of each and every one of our each and every one of our souls. Your heart, a reflection of the star that glittered all things into being on the morning of creation. That's where you find your power, that really tiny point. A seed, a heart. Live from that place. We can anchor ourselves in the power of small things. Jesus, the wisdom of Christ, points to us to notice how within the microcosm is the macrocosm. So when we touch a seed, we are really touching the entire ecosystem. We are touching the entire garden. We are touching the entire forest. Phil talked about the tree. Within a tiny seed is the entire tree. And so from a spiritual point of view, Christ is always saying the kingdom of heaven is within you. When we touch the human heart, Christ is inviting us to see that the entire realm of the divine is within the human heart. And so when we feel crushed by the powers and principalities of this world, or the world's definition of power, we come home to the heart and we touch the heart and remember that the realm of God dwarfs this world. This world is held within the realm of God. The galaxies around us are held within the realm of God. And this seed is the love and compassion that we see in Jesus reflected back to us. An echo of the creative power and potential within each and every one of us. And so we get to ask ourselves, what's our garden? What is your garden? What is your sphere of influence? Where can you plant seeds of love and compassion and let go of attachment to what the result is going to be? Let go of feeling, is this going to absolutely be the thing that is going to solve all the problems and transform everything and be the final destination point? Because ultimately, there is no final destination point. Jesus says, it's already here. The realm of God is here and it's emerging. We come into alignment with it. We don't wait for it. We don't run after it. We don't reach up to the realm of God in the sky. We don't act like it's someplace we're going when we die. It's here and now. We be it, and we allow ourselves to be it and become it together. Like Amanda Gorman, who talks about being the light in her poem. That's what it is to be the seed. And even being a church, even being a faith community, really what it is that it's an experiment in tending a garden. I think of some of our efforts over the course of the last few years even. When we give ourselves to ministry, we don't know what the result is going to be. Some take hold, and some things are not going to take hold. And it's worthwhile to keep planting the seeds anyway. It's life-giving and empowering to give ourselves to the work of just planting the seeds and be at home in the work of planting the seeds, because that's where God lives and that's where we find God. I think of how for a time we opened our doors to partner with the Rural Youth Support Coalition, which is a consortium of other nonprofits who wanted to have a youth drop-in center here. Ultimately, those nonprofits, because of their own reasons, split apart. We did what we could by welcoming them to be in here for a time, and we were able to partner with them, and during that time we offered a Youth Pride prom, and also other events that enriched the lives of the people who showed up for it in the moment when we offered it. It didn't take root and it didn't continue, but it was worthwhile for the moment. And then there's the blessing box at the church. It started as a smaller initiative, and now it has grown and become the community refrigerator and connected us to Centro Cultural and Adelante Mujeres and our neighbors and Zephyr Farm and a variety of other organic farms who have all come together to make sure that meals go out and food, healthy, rich, nutrient-dense, rich food is in that refrigerator. And it has brought neighbors together on Thursday to cook meals to go into that refrigerator. What started as something small did become something larger. And we can't always predict what's going to take root and what might not take root. But we get to sow and plant seeds together. And what a gift. And so in the midst of challenging times and in the face of adversity, we go on planting seeds together. And maybe you have a large sphere of influence. I was talking to someone, or a small, or what would be considered perhaps a smaller sphere of influence. I was talking to a friend who's a cashier at a store last week, and they were talking about their sphere of influence being that little cubby that they stand for 8 hours a day and see people pass through their line. And they make a specific effort to compliment every person who passes through their line, or ask something about the person's life that passes through their line. And just offering a deeper kindness or a more sincere curiosity in this space where we typically become numb to each other. That is a way that they plant seeds of compassion and allow the light of the realm of God to crack into the world. So we all have our garden. We each know where our garden is if we pause and think about it. And we might not have control of the results as we plant seeds, but we can give ourselves to that work, to that effort. And so it's not just the beauty of what Jesus is saying, it's not just that the action is tending the garden. Jesus is saying that you are the seed. It's each and every one of you, just as you are. We talked about original blessing. We've been talking a lot about original blessing this summer and how traumatized everybody has been made by the rotten idea of original sin, which was concocted by empire to control people. If you look in the mirror and tell yourself you're a miserable sinner in the hand of an angry God, you're going to act that way and treat other people that way. But when we acknowledged last week how Jesus doesn't say you're inherently bad, Jesus says you're the light of the world. And so when Jesus is talking about the seed, of course the seed is the Holy Spirit of God, this love and compassion that Christ embodies for us. And also, we are reflections of that. We are called to be reflections of that. And so, within the mega structures around us that make us feel powerless, we get to live like a seed falling into the cracks of those systems. You are a seed of that love and compassion just as you are. And when you remember that, we get to reap this bountiful harvest together. We get to be the good soil. We get to become the garden together and make of this world a garden. And not be living waiting to go to heaven, but bring the blessings of heaven to this world. So let's keep tending the garden.